Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next order of business will be points of personal privilege.
Points of personal privilege. Gentleman from Cape.
Mr. Speaker, point of personal privilege.
Please proceed, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For this past week, we've been celebrating Law Enforcement Memorial Week. It will culminate this Monday on May the 15th. And it's my privilege with the other members I've had here to be able to talk about the profession that I was so honored to serve in for 30 plus years. And one of the things I want to talk about today, and try to keep it on a higher note, but to share some experiences that I've had, is that one of the things that we looked at in 2022, there was 246 total deaths. That's about half of what there was in 2021. Many of them in 2021 were from COVID. Officers that could not take off, still had to interact with the public, still got out there and worked. There was a trooper from my area that died of COVID that was in his 50s, getting close to retirement, a friend I knew. Some stats I wanted to throw out because of what our law enforcement people do is that there's 54 million contacts between the police and our citizens in the year of 2021 from the latest stats they had. 2% of those contacts, which is about 1 million of them, ended up where there was force or the threat of force, where an officer had to use force or threat of force to deal with that situation. Now, 54 million is a lot, and for us to still have 1 million, it's too many. I'd like for that to be zero, but those things happen. So when we look at those, people that were interviewed, less than 1% of them felt that like they thought the police acted inappropriately. Now, as you all know, when we watch TV, we think that occurs daily or weekly, because the ones that are inappropriate make headlines, and now they make usually national headlines or world headlines. And I was going to share something that I learned when I first got into this, and I'm going back a little while, but you know, we've had recent incidents that's made the paper, the news, where an officer did something and was found to do something wrong. I've never supported anyone that done that, but sometimes you get placed in situations where you sometimes have to use force, and when you're in the middle of a fight, and you're fighting for your life, you'll do things way over and above probably what you were trained to do because you don't want to die that day. And back when I was in law enforcement, they had the Rodney King incident. That occurred in California, where the officer's training was that you didn't fight somebody, you told them to comply. If you didn't, then they'd use their PR-24s until that person complied. Obviously, Mr. King at that time, I think, was under the influence of drugs, so he probably had the fog of his brain and didn't understand what they were saying to him. But not even 3-4 weeks after that verdict was handed down on the officers, and there was a huge lawsuit, I believe, I was working midnight shift, and we had a bullpen in our jail. We didn't have cameras in there, but we had audio devices, so we didn't have a nighttime jailer in our 32-bed unit at the time. And there were 6 guys in the bullpen, a couple of them that I knew, and they were talking about the Rodney King incident. And so I was listening with interest. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. They're up there playing cards and still hanging out, and they were talking about, and I won't use the profanity that they were using. They were talking about the Rodney King incident. And all of them said, you know, I'd take a butt whooping for a few $1 million. And then they started talking about which officers they thought had the shortest temper, that they could actually entice into assaulting them if they were able to get into an incident with them on the street. They were planning and thinking, how can I become a millionaire? Because they probably won't kill me, but I'll have them work me over pretty good. They were saying those things while they were sitting there. Now, I'm making notes because I'm thinking, I wish I could have recorded this. Because I shared it with the chief the next day and said, hey, this is what they were talking about. And that resulted in us doing training, which I think made us, as law enforcement officers, become more aware so that we could guard against being enticed into doing things. Because sometimes when you're in the middle of a fight, somebody spit on you, they're gouging you, whatever. I've had people that had some extremely dangerous diseases. They would spit blood on us. Said, look, you're going to catch us if you don't leave me alone. Those things have happened to me and other officers I've worked around. So the reason I say that is it's a very challenging career. This particular report that I was looking at this week even said that record numbers of officers are leaving the profession because they feel like that the danger is greater and some of the public does not have their back. Now, I will always tell you that if someone does something terribly wrong, I don't want them in this profession, but that happens in every profession. And the point I want to make with law enforcement is, and to this body here is, it's a tough job. We should be out and thanking them for what they do, knowing that there will always be one that does not do it correctly, and we'll deal with that when it happens. So I encourage the body, when you see a law enforcement officer out there, to thank him for what he does, encourage people and help try to change the minds of all those out there that what we do is great. And I'll close here, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, that when I was in law enforcement, we had school children that would come by and do tours. I got to do some of them when I was working in a particular part of the department that was over that. And I remember we had parochial schools or public schools. Kids would send us stuff to put in our patrol cars. And I really enjoyed that because of that. And I got a little prayer one time from one of the parochial school kids that they sent to us. It was a law enforcement officer's prayer. And there's many of them out there. But when I was looking through these, I remembered that one because I'm going to share that with the body today because I think it's great. And there's many good ones. But if you'll just give me a moment here. It says, "Dear Lord, remind these officers of the law that they are blessed peacemakers. And when they call on the name of the Lord, they will also be sons and daughters of God. Help them to know that you will help them in their work, give them rest for their souls, and offer them strength in their journey." And that ends in amen. And that's one that I got that I kept in my patrol car for many years. I've lost it, which is through my own fault. But I would appreciate everyone here to think about the officers. If you'll give us a moment of silence for do that in concluding, I'd appreciate that, Mr. Speaker.
Would everybody in the chamber and the galleries please rise and offer a moment of silence to all those officers who have given the ultimate sacrifice, and keep those officers that serve us today in our thoughts. Thank you, gentlemen.